like we said before, if anything terrible happens, we'll just cut that out. Okay. There should be a pop-up on your screen which says it's going to be recorded.
Yeah, I've got that, yeah.
Okay, great. All ready?
Yep.
All right. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I'm Sebastian, your host for today's How to Overcome Barriers to AI Success in the Cloud and Your Corporation. By day, I'm a principal solutions architect, which means I spend a lot of time explaining complex technology in ways that won't make people's eyes glaze over. And by night, well, I'm probably still explaining complex technology, just with a lot more coffee and questionable life choices. Now, today's topic is a technology so powerful it can write essays, generate code, and even generate poetry, though it still can't figure out why my printer never works when I need it. I'm joined today by Eamonn O'Neill to lay it all out for me and you. Eamonn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Sebastian. Hi, everyone. My name is Eamonn O'Neill. I'm the co-founder and CTO of Lemongrass. And I've been working in IT since the early 90s. And as we are going to talk about AI today, it's the latest in a long sequence of profound but very exciting technology. So I'm really looking forward to having a chat about that with you today, Sebastian.
Great. All right.
And just about Lemongrass, so this company that started back in 2008, what we do is we help primarily SAP customers, so customers who run SAP software, to adopt cloud, pretty simply. But what that means is over the 16, 17 odd years we've been working with SAP customers, we've learned a lot about what it takes to get not just cloud adoption working, but some of these newer technologies and capabilities that have effectively emerged from cloud, how to adopt those as well. We've got people all over the world, customers all over the world. It's a very exciting time to be working with SAP on cloud, and indeed SAP themselves are making some great strides in continuing to release innovation for their customers that we're helping them with.
Great.
Thanks about you.
Yes, and N2WS partners with Lemongrass. We are partners in crime, or not so much crime. And simply put, N2WS is the backup and recovery powerhouse for AWS and Azure in a single pane of glass. We've been at it for over 12 years, and we keep critical data safe, automate your backups, and most importantly, help you recover fast when things inevitably hit the fan. And the best part is we don't just protect your data, we save you money while doing it. Because let's be honest, cloud bills have a way of sneaking up on you like a horror movie villain. So if you like fast recovery, bulletproof backups, and not breaking the bank, N2WS is the way to go. So generative AI is our topic today. Think of generative AI as a master chef, and large language model is kind of sort of the specialty tool, like a ridiculously smart Michelin star pasta maker. Generative AI is the broad category of AI that can create things: text, image, music, code, you name it. It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet of AI-generated content. Large language models, on the other hand, are a specific type of generative AI that focuses on text. They're the wordsmith of the AI world, turning out everything from poetry to dad jokes at lightning speed. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Eamonn knows far more about this than I do. Eamonn, why don't you take it away?
Sure. Well, I think everybody has probably heard of AI these days with the launch of ChatGPT a few years ago. And indeed, if you pay attention to the media, the tech media specifically, you will see that the pace of innovation hasn't slowed down at all since that pretty major release. And I suppose one of the first things that happens with any new technology, especially one that's available on a website to everybody, is that people try it out and they're immediately impressed with that technology. And that, again, for me, is one of the amazing things about cloud is it brings this innovation to people much faster than it used to be 10, 20 years ago, where you had to buy software, install it, configure it, get it running. This was available to people over a weekend. Indeed, I remember on the Friday seeing it on TikTok, and on the Saturday I was logged on playing with it. So I mean, it shows you the pace of deployment of these ideas. Now, the downside of that is it also raises expectations to potentially, levels that really aren't sustainable. Um, and part of that is because it's any new concept is pretty difficult to get your head around on the first pass. So, I mean, Gartner say this as a pattern that happens with all technology, and they talk about exactly this chart here we have on screen, which is the expectation graph, and really what they're trying to show here is that people tend to get quite overexcited about a new technology, but pretty quickly afterwards they hit what's called the trough of disillusionment, where they now realize it's not quite what they want, and actually they can't get it to do what they want, so they think it's actually not that good at all. Whereas indeed the truth is somewhere in between. So, what we're seeing today, 2 years, 2.5 years after ChatGPT was released, and all of the subsequent improvements of that and competitor products since, is that a lot of enterprises specifically have immediately tried to get at this technology. Indeed, I was talking to one CIO who said he would love to get his hands on the person who coined the term AI, because every CIO got bashed over the head with it by their board as they were told, go and get us some AI in our business. And that's part of the problem, is that people see this as a technology, and that's all you need to get going. But the truth is, it's a lot more. Like all other technologies that enterprises look at, it takes more than just deploying that technology into your business to get the value that the expectations set.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we've got this beautiful roller coaster ride of AI expectations, from the technology trigger to the plateau of productivity. At what point do companies realize they're stuck in the trough of disillusionment? And I guess more importantly, how do they climb out? Do they need a Sherpa or just better data? What do you think?
Bit of both, actually, I would say. But I think your first part of your question, how do you realize you're in that trough? Well, I think it's pretty easy. Basically, when you feel that the quality of the outputs doesn't match the expectation. So, for example, we've seen plenty of customers who've tried a POC by themselves. And of course, there's plenty of providers who are willing to sell you POCs and access to their technology to try out things. Um, but at the end of the POC, the proof of concept, they tend to find that, well, either the quality of the output was good, but really not as good as a human can do,
Mm.
and certainly and not even acceptable to replace a human doing it. Um, or they found that it was maybe way too difficult to extend it to the knowledge that this Gen AI, this model would need to understand. So so I think that you tend to see it from an emotional response within the business, where people, just effectively say it looks okay, but it's not great. And if you can't figure out what's wrong with that, and I've seen it, there's skepticism that's built up in some companies to say, this is all hype. And and once you start hearing that noise, of course, it sort of disheartens the people who are trying to make it work, trying to bring it to life. But the truth is, again, there's somewhere between the two, that to climb out of that trough, you need to understand, well, what are the triggers for success? What are the things that has made other tech introduction in enterprise successful in the past? And fundamentally, it boils down to a couple of points that we're going to talk about today. Um, you mentioned a Sherpa. Of course, good AI skills are really important. Understanding what AI can do and what it can't do is important. Um, Secondly, you mentioned data, of course, and we'll talk a bit about that in a second too. You probably heard that before. Most people would have heard that AI is only as good as the data you put in. But the third thing is ownership, and that's almost is AI irrelevant. That's across any technology. People need to own this, and a big part of any enterprise adoption of technology is a transformation of the operating model. And what that simply means is people's job will be a bit different, and you have to make sure that that difference is actually explained to people. Here's what's going to be different about your job, and that they own that and decide, yes, they're on board. They understand how to do this job differently now. Is not a technology on its own. It has to be the old people, process, technology triangle applied to this problem again. And then once you start seeing that, you start getting wins. And one win begets another win, and that starts to build a bit of momentum as people start to realize how they go about introducing AI successfully.
All right. That's a good lead in to the digital transformation, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, and this is something that, sometimes when you're sipping your latte on your own and you're trying to think about the broader impact of technology over the last 30 years, and specifically with respect to enterprise, there has been a desire to achieve digital transformation. And to me, what digitalization means is a little bit like what Uber did to taxi companies. I mean, you can remember when you order a taxi, you phone someone up, you try to work out where you are, you try to give them that location. They try to find out where there's another free cab. They give you an estimate roughly of when it's going to arrive. Of course, you're not sure if it's going to arrive in time. You ring them back. Where is the cab? The cab arrives. You have to tell them where you want to go to. You don't know the price until you get there because the meter's running. And then you have to either wait to pay with card or fork out cash and get a receipt. And that whole process was something we lived with, of course, for many years. And then what Uber did was effectively took people out of a lot of those processes. And as you see now, all of that data, because it's available on your phone, it knows where you are, it knows where all the cars are, it can work out the duration for arrival, duration to pick you up, and the cost, all within a couple of clicks of extra data. So this digitalization dream, if you like, is absolutely in the back of the minds of large enterprise. They want to achieve that same sort of efficiency because it gives customers a far better experience. It takes cost out, it takes waste out of their enterprise. And it makes people's lives a lot easier when you're working in a company where these things can be done quickly, internally as well as externally. So having said all that, how did enterprises go about it? Well, they adopted technology that was available over the last 20, 30 years. Things like ERP were very important, as we see in the world of SAP. It addressed across a whole range of business departments, automated solutions for many different business processes. But what we found was that, to really scale that up, you needed these global reach. People built their own data centers to try and reach across the globe, set up their own networks. And really, it was only when cloud came around that people began to realize, actually, hang on a minute, I can get access to the best platforms in the world, the best capability in the world, and I can deploy my business quite easily anywhere in the world. And that was in itself a massive step forward to this idea of how we digitalize this. So bringing ERP to cloud is something we started working in 2010. It was absolutely one of those moments where the penny dropped for me. It was like, wow, this is really powerful. We can deploy this globally with just adopting the cloud. And then, of course, we saw not long after that, but 10 years ago, we started seeing people realize that with cloud came incredibly cheap storage for data, which means you could keep all your data all the time. And that, of course, opened up brand new opportunities for people like data scientists who started bringing their technology to the cloud and realized that they could see insights with this vast amount of data that was never there before or never kept before. So data certainly went, data transformation, again, it was not easy. A lot of people never completed a data transformation program completely, but certainly to the extent they did, they saw some real value. And of course, finally, it's AI. When I say finally, it will not be final. There will be more steps in this journey, but what we saw from a business process point of view was that even though with the the ability to roll out ERP on cloud, with the ability to bring data analytics at a global scale to your fingertips to make decisions better, there was still a need for humans in many of the business processes. Somebody who had to think of the data, make a decision. And that still means, you need armies of people, maybe doing things like classifying invoices, or maybe trying to work out credit ratings for individual companies, or orders even. And so very big companies have armies of people, either internally or externally, still doing manual work, even though they've got ERP, they've got cloud, they've got data on cloud. They think that, they've done a really good job, but they still have got this challenge of, how do I get these little decision points automated? And not that long ago, RPA, robotic process automation, was certainly considered one of the ways to solve that. And to some extent it did, but well, to a large extent it didn't, because it was trying to take on something that wasn't really that programmable. It's very difficult to say if this, then that, for some of these more nuanced decisions that people have to make. But that's where Gen AI starts to come in. Something that can reason a bit more like a human can suddenly has a lot of potential. And this is really, I think, the way people need to consider AI, at least one use case of AI, which is business process automation. So how can you inject Gen AI into your business process to digitalize that and turn that into an Uber-like experience? So digitalization this is all part of that agenda. All of these transformations are part of the same agenda. But what I think is really interesting is these have emerged from each other. Cloud gave rise to data transformation. Data transformation gave rise to AI. So the cloud underpins all of this. The ability to have a global infrastructure that everybody can contribute to, everybody can draw from, is again one of the most profound things that's happened in my view in technology. So this is the latest iteration. As I said earlier, I expect to see other iterations. But for companies that try to adopt it, first of all, think of it potentially in terms of business process. Secondly, recognize that the successes you may have had in the previous steps probably came down to the things I mentioned earlier, right? Which is bring in good experts who can tell you what the art of the possible is. Bring in your business owners so that they can decide, they can tell you where the value of that potential is. And they can also then take ownership of making sure it's implemented and it sticks, that it gets done. And those potential value drivers, those potential outcomes are actually delivered. So to me, it all sort of fits into a repeating pattern, despite the fact that these are way more interesting technologies each generation. There's a very common pattern in how you successfully adopt them, or you end up in that trough of disillusionment.
Yeah, Gen AI pilots and proof of concepts are popping up everywhere. And I think execs always want to know, well, where's the return on my investment? And like you said, what's the best way for companies to ensure they are not just setting cash on fire in a very sophisticated way? It reminds me of that really old commercial from IBM where they said, what the solution isn't just throwing money at the problem. So I guess the best way to get this journey started is to get experts in, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always a bit of advisory that's a good idea to start with. And the first thing you want from a partner is a bit of education. As I said, art of the possible is probably the most important. Like, what could this do for my industry or for my specific setup here? And what should I not be thinking that this is going to do? Even setting expectations, starting to shape the objectives of a project. Is something that an experienced person can bring to the mix. And even though it's still very new, there are people who've got their head around this, they've got some successes now, and they're able to bring that story and that expertise to bear for enterprise. So yeah, there is very much a the Sherpa idea, as you mentioned, bringing someone who can help get this shaped properly, so that you have more chance of success.
Somebody who can get you to the summit. Um, I guess this is a good next step, right? The importance of data.
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, as I said, everything emerges from the previous step
Hmm.
in this journey, at least, to the extent that enterprises can use it. Um, and one of the things that we've seen plenty of examples of is AI, as you start to implement it internally and you effectively point it at your own data, you start looking at your SharePoint sites, your OneDrive, or your Google Docs, or wherever you may have your repository of unstructured data, as you pointed to DBs. There's always a couple of things that it immediately starts flushing out. And one of those is data and quality of data. So it sort of exposes the sins that are in there. And but in many ways that's important because it shows you that there's gaps and that the data transformation step has not been completed. So, to the extent where there's holes in that transformation, you will see those very clearly in AI as you start to do the projects. And some examples of that. I mean, we've all seen certainly the unstructured data world where people have different versions of Excel sheets. They're all purporting to be the final version, final 01, final do not use, all this kind of stuff. All sits on the same file shares, and to be honest, even a human struggles to know which version to use.
Mm.
But for AI, it generally will absorb them all and treat them all as valid and true. So when you start asking questions about whether it's Excel or PowerPoint um, or a Word document or PDF or whatever, or even videos, it'll start seeing contradictions. Of course, versions change, so data information changes.
Mm.
Sometimes the rules change, but it'll see contradictions. And if you start asking simple questions, and one of the very first POCs most companies do is they basically plonk a bit of an AI capability on top of their unstructured data to publish to the employees. Here's the policies. Ask questions of it if you want to. A really good use case, but
Mm.
immediately users start getting low quality answers, and quality is the main measure of AI. So how good is this answer? How useful is it? How accurate is it? Um, so we've seen in the past where one customer, I thought it was really simple, practical, but powerful example of this was they had a whole bunch of policies and SOPs, standard operating procedures that they had documented on how they were to run their business and helping people in the manufacturing sites as well as people in the back office do their jobs.
Mm.
Um, and they were trying to expose these via an AI chatbot that they built themselves. Um, and what they noticed was um, that straight away they were starting to get some contradictions, not just in terms of versioning, which straight away went, hang on, who's controlling the versions, but also some unexpected things like headers and footers in the documents, table of contents, things like this, which actually are of no interest at all to the AI. There's very little semantic meaning in these for something as powerful as AI. So they realized that A, they could start to simplify the templates and only add information that was actually useful. But B, and more importantly, they actually set up a little leadership group to say who owns these documents and
Mm.
who's going to make sure that their team maintains them to be accurate and up to date. And those two things had a massive improvement on the quality of the answers the employees were getting. And there's plenty of other examples similar to that, where the quality of the inputs, the quality of the knowledge, as it's termed, that you put into an AI model, has a massive impact on the accuracy of the answers to questions people are asking. So yeah, data's massively important. I don't think I could overstate how important the data in is going to be in getting success.
Well, as you say, data is the AI prompt source. Let's be real. Most companies' data is like a teenager's bedroom, right? Messy, disorganized, and occasionally full of surprises. So I guess, like you said, the biggest mistake businesses can make by trying to feed the AI models is really make sure that the data is valuable and have the right people clean up the data, right?
Yeah, clean up and maintain ongoing. So when I talked earlier about the operating model and the change in the operating model, simple
Mm,
questions are, is there somebody who on a regular basis reviews the quality of these documents? Right? It might sound like a very simple question, but the truth is, for most enterprises, at least for most documents, the answer is no. There might be some very tightly controlled documents that have
mm,
a yes, but you're going to find in most companies, they don't waste the time to do that because they figure out a human can figure out what to do. But once you start exposing it to AI, you realize, there's much more value in getting this right. And therefore, we need people to do that maintenance role. And that's the change to the operating model. Is that now happening? So it's not a one and done, even though that's usually a bit of a big bump in improvement in quality. It's an ongoing maintenance role for all unstructured and structured data. Um,
yeah.
and a second thing that sort of links to the data is access and security. Again, one of the things that we've seen, um, everybody's got security policies, you know. The truth is, though, while they're easier to manage for things like databases and applications that you've written or people have written for you that tend to come with a role and access model, unstructured data tends to have very poor guardrails around access, usually like to a folder level. And people tend to share folders very easily, certainly today with things like OneDrive and Google Docs.
Mm,
It's very easy to accumulate access to a whole bunch of data that you didn't realize you actually had.
mm,
Um, and certainly as a leader, you might not realize people do have, and you might be a little shocked when you start seeing that. And once again, once you start looking at the answers people get, you can suddenly realize that some people may ask for, oh yeah, what's the salary grades for my management team? What's the salary ranges? And some people get answers because unbeknownst to them, they've got access to a folder where that data is actually in. Um, so security is another part of data management. How do you secure this data properly? And that's a question that needs addressing urgently anyway, but again, is exposed by the AI projects. So, I go back to the point earlier, these are sort of building blocks. Anything that AI needs to see, you might need to go back and look at your data again and say, like, for this area or domain of data, have we got it clean and high quality? And secondly, have we got it secured properly so people can see only what they're meant to see, and certainly not things that we have as more confidential or protected.
Clearly, you know everything about this, and I guess you can tell us a little bit about the real life results that you see as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, like anybody, we went on a journey in Lemongrass. I suppose, like most people, we tried it ourselves first, and we tried it internally. And really, the journey is quite interesting. A number of lessons. First off, what do we want to do with it? Right? So again, we actually built it up to initially scan unstructured data. And to a degree that was useful. Again, it exposed exactly the same problems we have that everybody else might have, which is data quality and security. So that was something that we were able to patch up. But then we came across, and the way we approached this was fundamentally, we actually looked at where do we spend a lot of our money? Okay. And we analyzed that. I mean, we've got the data to show that quite quickly. And then we went, okay, we went to the person who's responsible for that function. And we spend a lot of time looking at tickets for customers. Okay. So, as you can imagine, in most service companies, that's a pretty big part of what they spend money on. So we went to the team that manages that and said, okay, let's look at what you're doing and let's show you what we can do with AI. Where could we apply that to your area to try and drive some efficiency? And what they said was, okay, let's take something simple, right? Every ticket that comes in has to be acknowledged, and then there has to be immediately a follow-on action. And that action might be escalate, or it might be, patch, or it might be, answer more questions. But there's always an immediate next action that has to be allocated. Now, we have around 15,000 tickets every month coming in. So, that's quite a bit of work doing that. And so we thought, well, but we also have a small team that reviews, retrospectively, what did our people suggest was the right next step? And that's a quality team. So they basically spend time looking for any pattern where they think maybe people didn't know the right answer. They might need some training, maybe they need a bit of help, and that's what their job is to try and look around for any quality variation, right? So so the thesis was, well, could we get AI to do what that quality team's doing, but rather than do it over a sample of maybe 200, 300 tickets a month, could we do it across all 15,000? Um, that would drive massive improvements in at least reporting, but also ideally in quality. Eventually, if we can spot patterns, we'll spot them more easily.
Mm.
Um, so that was what we tried to do. Okay, so how can AI review other people's work and tell us if there's a problem with that work? Now, that
Yeah.
started off by training it on the SOPs, training it on what we think we should be doing, and and then using the LLMs like OpenAI's or Gemini or now Nova, but all of the different models that exist today. Um, and as we started working through this, we looked at the results that the AI was coming back with, and we're saying, is it telling us the right answer or not? Is it
Mm.
giving us false positives or is it giving us false negatives? And so we started measuring the accuracy of the results of what it was telling us. And it started off around 70 odd percent, which isn't too bad, actually. That's not a bad, and that's sort of the experience you get with ChatGPT. Ask it anything, it gives you an answer that's not too bad, but it's probably about 70% accurate in some cases, certainly over a large sample. So we set about then improving that. And the way we improved it, it's very similar to what I talked about. We have AI experts in Lemongrass who helped with things called fine-tuning, chain of thought, trying to break down this simple question into a much more staged kind of workflow of questions that would arrive at a much higher accurate answer. And secondly, improving the knowledge. So going back to the SOPs and other knowledge that we were embedding in the model and trying to improve the quality of that, make sure it was more clear. And between those two things, we saw this massive improvement in accuracy over a fairly short period of time. As you see here, within a few months, we were able to
Right.
get 97% accurate. Now, that in itself is a really good little story because it reinforces everything I've said earlier, but it's also it's effectively a generic graph. This graph is pretty much what you'd see across any use case. Now you do see a bit of a dip in the middle there. That was where we changed the model and we started realizing that actually we had to play around with the parameters quite a bit. Accuracy fell off, but again, it meant that we could push on beyond the 96% or so that we had.
Yeah, exactly.
So sometimes you go back a little bit, which is fine. But because we tracked this, it told a nice story about how we got to the end. And it's quite interesting. 97% is better than what a human can do. Um, and I'd never really thought of what does that actually mean? That AI is better than human. What does that look like? And the way it manifests itself is that humans disagree with each other more than they disagree with the AI. So what does that mean? Well, it means that whenever you look at, say, an SOP, the AI will read the SOP and give you a at this level, gives you a very repeatable, very consistent answer based on that SOP. But you give it to two humans and they will read two different things into that SOP. So they interpret it differently because of the nuance of being a human. That one human will read a sentence differently than another human sometimes. So we actually saw humans disagreeing, but the AI was reading it correctly. So of course, what does that mean? Well, we had to update the SOP for the humans to be more clear for them.
Okay.
And that's quite I didn't expect that. I'm sure people who've worked in other AI domains may have seen this sort of thing before, but it was quite it was one of those moments that sort of was quite satisfying because you could start to imagine now what you could do across other use cases in larger enterprises. So yeah, overall, a really interesting story. But it really reinforces some of the things I've mentioned around, ownership to find those use cases,
Yeah.
ownership to make sure they get embedded, bring the AI skills, work on the data that's underpinning it. And that's really what, for us, in this example, got us out of that trough of disillusionment.
Well, 99% accuracy is extremely impressive. And I
Yeah.
got to tell you, I love the part where humans now disagree with each other more than they disagree with AI. Are we witnessing the first step towards AI being a marriage counselor of corporate decision making? When can I outsource all my arguments in the future?
Well, eventually, but of course, all of this comes down to the data that's put into the system, which of course is a result of many, many other arguments. So, um, but for sure, I mean, the once you get to that level of accuracy, it then becomes, a valid question. Why would you use humans to do it
Hmm.
if it's giving you a more accurate answer and faster and at larger scale? Um, so, but again, that's the promise of AI, right? That it will bring high quality, human level thinking to activities that maybe are things that people don't want to be doing every day, and that we could be moving on from. Um, but yeah, I mean, this same behavior, this same sort of experience will be across a large number of different parts of the enterprise in the future.
So I guess these are the key lessons to be learned here, right?
Yeah, and again, at the risk of repeating myself, see this as a transformation.
Yeah.
Like all transformations, think of the operating model. You're changing the way people work. So you've got to, if you really want to adopt this, you've got to follow the same lessons that people have learned over the decades in enterprise of how you successfully adopt technology. Um, so that means working with the business, finding owners for this, but giving them the support of specialists because again, most people's expectations or understanding of this AI isn't correct. So bringing a real expert speeds up that up. So first
For
off,
sure.
see it as a transformation, and then that will expose some things as you do that. The first thing that will expose is the data and the quality of the data and the security of that data. Um, so again, then that means you're going back and revisiting some of the data transformation program that maybe you didn't do or was never started even. Um,
Mm.
but it does put some urgency on that. And again, the word transformation is important. This isn't just about one person updating documents. This is about getting the owners, the business owners of that data to take ownership and to change their operating model so that they maintain that properly. And it's measured and it gets done. And then finally, once you go through the data, you start to realize, well, hang on, maybe some of this stuff hasn't been moved to the cloud. Maybe some of the stuff we don't keep anymore because it's too expensive. So why don't we put that on the cloud and we can keep it forever? And that's data that we can then use to drive our AI program. So you'll see some cloud transformation that hasn't happened. And you may need to, again, once again, it's a transformation. So it's not just about one and done. It's about maintaining
Yeah.
those platform technologies, things that are operational, things that you and I do every day, making sure things are backed up, making sure things are available, putting in place, taking advantage of this world-class phenomenal called cloud that will enable all of this for you. So there's always, and it's fine to go backwards and tidy up things that haven't been done.
Yeah.
But once you tidy those up, then you can start to release that value back at the AI end of this chain.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's an ongoing process, right? And I,
Yeah.
I really like the way you're describing this, the transformation. And it's something that fortunately or unfortunately, you're never done with it. It's just an ongoing process, but the rewards are just so tremendous, right?
Yeah, and look, as you say, it's there every year for every enterprise. This necessity to adopt change and to adopt technology is part of it. Other changes come in as well, of course. But and from a technology point of view, it's not that difficult to look ahead and see what's coming next. I mean, we can see already some profound technologies about to pop up, not just in terms of AI, as it moves towards potentially, like the AGI level and maybe even beyond it.
Hmm.
Of quantum computing will certainly have a big impact, both
No doubt.
on general operations, but also a massive impact on AI. Fusion might seem like a very different thing, but once you've got the same ways you've got infinite compute, once you've got infinite power, what does that mean for companies and enterprises? Um, and robotics, of course, is another massive, profound technology that's seems to be getting close to becoming getting to the mainstream. So this pace of technology change is not slowing down, it's continuing to speed up.
Yeah.
And it means that enterprises have to continue to recognize that those who are going to be successful in adopting these technologies have to be successful in transformation and have to be successful in understanding their operating model and improving it with these new technologies. So this is, I guarantee if we check in again in 5 years' time, there will be another topic, but it will be exactly the same message of how you adopt it.
It's a date, you and I, 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Well,
Sounds good.
I think that's a wrap on today's AI adventure. We've explored the wonders of generative AI, survived the hype cycle, and even managed to keep our jobs for now. Eamon, here's your red carpet for anything you would like us to know about lemongrass.
Thank you. Well, of course, you can see we're very enthusiastic about this topic in Lemongrass, but we're also very enthusiastic about helping customers adopt this technology. It's something that, from the very start when we set the company up, it was set up to be a techie company. We wanted to bring technologies to enterprise, and we've done that successfully over the last 16 years. So what I would say is, we've helped customers along all three of those tiers as they move and adopt more and more modern technology. And we're very proud of some of the work we've done. So if anybody's interested, wants to reach out and have a chat about it, my details are here. I'm very happy to talk about it and what else we can do to make sure you guys get out of this trough of disillusionment.
That sounds like a plan. I think this is really the future, and I'm so glad that we had this conversation. This was really exciting.
For me too.
Um, Well, last thing I can say then is follow N2WS on LinkedIn for more insights. Reach out to us for a chat. And yes, you can also contact me directly, Sebastian at N2WS.com. We love discussing real world use cases and showing you how we can partner with you to protect large environments and keep your cloud backups stress free and budget friendly. A massive thanks to Eamonn O'Neill for sharing some serious AI knowledge with us. And to all of you watching, thanks for joining us and have a great day, everyone. Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.